Good morning, my dear students. Let us start with the slide which is showing what happens. What happens after administration of a drug? Now, drug can be administered in various routes, which I have discussed in my previous presentation. Let us consider the drug is administered via oral route. Now, the drug is administered at its site of administration. Then the drug will undergo absorption and it will be available in the systemic circulation. From the systemic circulation, it will be distributed in different tissues and a part will be restricted to the systemic circulation. Then the drug will undergo metabolism in the liver, in the kidney, in different other places, and ultimately the non-polarized form of the drug is converted to the polarized form, that means the water soluble form, and will be excreted from the body. Now, by the term elimination, we mean metabolism and excretion. So, here in my first slide, I am trying to demonstrate absorption, distribution, and a combination of metabolism and excretion, which means A, D, M, and E, which also means that we are entering into an arena of pharmacokinetics. By the term pharmacokinetics, we mean that what body does to the drug, which includes absorption, metabolism, distribution, and excretion. Now, this pharmacokinetics is basically a quantitative study of drug movement in, through, and out of the body. And pharmacokinetic processes involve transport of the drug across biological membranes. Now, what is a biological membrane? Biological membrane is a bilayer of phospholipid and cholesterol molecules. The polar groups, the glycerol phosphate, attached to the ethanolamine or choline or hydroxyl group of cholesterol, which you have already read in biochemistry. Of these are oriented at the two surfaces, and the non-polar hydrocarbon chains are embedded in the matrix to form a continuation sheet, and this imparts high electrical resistance and relative impermeability to the membrane. Now, these extrinsic and intrinsic protein molecules, which are adsorbed on the lipid bilayer, these glycoproteins or glycolipids, these are formed on the surface by attachment to polymeric sugars, amino sugars, or sialic acids. The specific lipid and protein composition of different membranes differs according to the cell or the organelle, the type of the organelle. The proteins are able to freely float through the membrane. It may associate and organize, or it's vice versa. So, ultimately, the lipid molecules are capable of lateral movement. Thus, the biological membranes are highly dynamic structures, and the drugs are transported across the membrane by different methods. And you know these methods. The first thing is the passive diffusion, the second one is filtration, and the third one is specialized transport. The specialized transport again can be subclassified into different types, or it can be mediated by different different ways. The carrier transport, where you can say that it may not require energy, and that is called facilitated diffusion. The transporter belonging to the superfamily of the solute carrier transporter. It may be active transport. Again, the active transport can be subclassified into two types. Primary active transport, where the energy is obtained directly by the hydrolysis of ATP, and the transporters belonging to the superfamily of ATP binding cascade, that means ABC transporters, whose intracellular loops have ATP as activity. And there is another type that is called secondary active transport. In this type of active transport, affected by another set of SLC, that means the solute carrying transporters, and the energy to pump one solute is derived from the downhill movement of another solute. So it's always better to understand these things with examples. If I am taking secondary active transport, so I can take example of the sodium chlorine dependent neurotransmitter transporter for norepinephrine, serotonin and dopamine. If I am taking primary active transport, then we can talk about many xenobiotics which can induce or inhibit P-glycoprotein, and they can be transported via P-glycoprotein and have similar effect on drug metabolizing different isoenzymes. Beside this, there is another type of transport that is called vesicular transport. You also have some idea about this. One is called endocytosis, another one is called exocytosis. So endocytosis is that the certain substances with very large or impermeable molecules are transported inside the cell, or it is can be extruded from it, that is known as exocytosis. If it is liquid, then it is called pinocytosis. So these in brief are different methods of transport of drugs across the membrane, either through the membrane or undergoing lateral movement. Now there is a significant effect of pH occurs when a drug is going inside a cell or targeting a particular tissue. So most of the drugs are weak electrolytes. Their ionization is basically pH dependent, and they are completely, if you are comparing it with the strong electrolytes, which are nearly completely ionized at acidic as well as alkaline pH, drugs are weak electrolytes. So this ionization is also partial. The ionization of a weak acid, like the acid like carbonic acid, is given and can be represented by equation that the pH equal to pK. Here pK is the negative logarithm of acidic dissociation constant of the weak electrolyte. So pH equal to pK plus log of the acid divided by the ionized fraction of the acid divided by the acid itself. That means if it is the acid is HA, then the ionized part is A minus divided by HA means the acid. So pH equal to pKa plus log A minus by HA. When A minus by HA is equal to 1, then it becomes log 1, and log 1 is 0. So at that moment, when there is 50% of the drug is in the ionized form, whether it is acidic or basic, then the equation becomes in such a manner that pH becomes pKa plus log 1, and as log 1 is 0, at that condition pH becomes pKa. Now one thing from here you have to understand that acidic drug will ionize at basic pH and basic drug will ionize at acidic pH. But the portion of the drug which will probably penetrate most inside the cell is the non-ionized fraction of the drug. So, non-ionized fraction of the drug will go inside the cell, whereas mostly the ionized fraction is staying outside, or if it is going by some means it's going inside the cell, it will be concentrated within the cell. So, that is the basic concept of pharmacokinetics and the role of pH in pharmacokinetics. Now, I am taking one example like acidic drug, and you know aspirin, which is basically acetyl salicylic acid. It's an acidic drug. Its pK is 3.5. So, largely it is unionized at acidic gastric pH. Probably you have headache and you have taken aspirin. Now, in this acidic gastric pH, it will be present in the unionized form, and hence it will be absorbed from stomach. While the bases, there are some bases like atropine where pKa value is around 10. So, these are largely ionized and they are only absorbed when they reach the intestines. So, most of the drugs, if they are basic in nature, they used to bypass this level of stomach and started being absorbed from the level of large alkaline environment of small intestine. Sometimes it so happens that unionized form of acidic drug like aspirin, it crosses the surface membrane of gastric mucosal cell because it is the unionized form, so it will penetrate very easily and the acidic pH will help it, and it will go within the cell. But within the cell, even if it is a parietal cell, within the cell the pH is more. pH is not 3.5 or 3, it is around 7. So, at that pH, they will only passes to the extracellular fluid and they will start destroying the mucosal membrane from inside, and this phenomenon is known as ion trapping. And if you compare it, you can compare with it with one of our greatest literature, Mahabharata, the way the Abhimanyu penetrated the Chakravyuha, like that aspirin is coming within the cell, but within the cell it is going to be trapped due to the basic pH, almost basic pH in comparison to the pK value of aspirin, and it is not possible for it to come outside. It is only undergoing, slowly passing to the extracellular fluid. Basic drugs, they attain higher concentration intracellularly when the pH is 7 to 7.4, which is true for plasma. Acidic drugs are ionized more in alkaline urine. So, when we are talking about ADME, it ultimately the elimination is a combination of metabolism and excretion. So, when we are talking about excretion, you also have to remember that these lipid soluble drug will ultimately converted into a water soluble preparation, because the drugs cannot be accumulated in your body to produce different types of toxic effects. So, by the mechanism, the human body is just like a lab. So, our body mechanism is such that it is converted to this water soluble form, and acidic drugs, they are ionized more in alkaline urine, and therefore they do not back diffuse in the kidney tubules and they are excreted faster. Similarly, if you are taking acidic drugs, they will not the acidic drugs are ionized, but the alkaline drugs are not going to be ionized in that fraction. I mean, they are going to be in the non-ionized form, and hence most of them may be back diffused in the kidney tubules. Lipid soluble non-electrolytes readily cross biological membranes, and their transport is pH dependent. Now let us go to the first part of this pharmacokinetics, that is absorption. Now before undergoing absorption, you just have to think, once you are taking a oral drug, whether it's a tablet or a capsule or whatever may be the form, that one is started being destroyed from your mouth cavity unless it is enteric coated. What do you mean by enteric coated tablet? The term enteric coated tablet means it is prepared in such a manner externally by the pharmacist. That means the pharmaceutical part is such that it is not going to be destroyed by the enzymes present in your mouth cavity, in the esophagus, in your stomach. It will bypass the hydrochloric acid of the stomach, and it will be available at the alkaline level, alkaline environment of small intestine. And from there, this enteric coating is going to be dissolved and it will start being absorbed. So that is the advantage of giving enteric coated tablet. But if the tablet is not enteric coated, what will happen? The destruction will start from your mouth cavity. There are enzymes, different amylase, lipase, then in the esophagus, then in the stomach, then it will come into the alkaline environment of small intestine. From small intestine, you will see it will reach duodenum, and from there it will be absorbed. It will be absorbed via this portal vein, hepatic portal vein, and it is reaching liver, and it is undergoing metabolism. But we don't want this metabolism to be happen. It's starting from mouth cavity, it's undergoing metabolism in the esophagus, it is undergoing a little bit of metabolism in duodenum, but it is absorbed from there, and from there it is reaching the level of liver via portal vein. And in liver there are different enzymes which are also destroying a little part of the drug. From liver via vena cava it is reaching right side of the heart. From right side of the heart via pulmonary artery, that is the only artery carrying deoxygenated blood, and via that artery it will reach lungs, and in the lungs it is also undergoing little bit of metabolism, and from there it will be drained via pulmonary vein to the left atrium, and from left atrium via mitral valve it will reach left ventricle of the heart, and from left ventricle of the heart, when the heart contracts, the drug with blood will be circulated in the systemic circulation via aorta, and then only we can say the drug is present in the systemic circulation. So the drug, if it is given as a dose of probably 500 milligram, maybe a paracetamol tablet, you may not know, probably 300 milligram is destroyed or being modified or changed during the process of absorption before reaching systemic circulation at different levels, and those levels are mouth cavity, esophagus, stomach, small intestine. Mostly it is happening at the liver and also lungs. And this phenomenon where the metabolism is happening even before complete absorption, even before the drug is reaching the systemic circulation, is known as first pass metabolism. So the first pass metabolism is mostly not required in clinical practice, but whenever we are getting a preparation, ready-made preparation, that means the preparation we are prescribing, pre-compounded prescriptions, it is prepared in a manner that they are considering this kind of modification of the drug from active form to inactive form at different levels, and they know that how much will be only available at the level of systemic circulation. So the same thing is depicted here, and once it is available at the level of systemic circulation, in the systemic circulation we have two kinds of proteins. One is albumin, which is the acidic protein, that means a protein for the acidic drugs, and the other one is alpha 1 acid glycoprotein. There is another protein called globulin, but that has a little significance. That alpha 1 acid glycoprotein is for the basic drugs. So either those drugs may bind with these proteins, that is called the bound form of the drug, or it can be present in the free form, that means it is only floating in the plasma. From the free form, it may be transferred to liver, or it may transfer to different organs like retina, brain, adipose tissue, muscular tissue, cardiac tissue, and undergo metabolism, the kind of metabolism which we require in the clinical practice. Following metabolism, these insoluble drugs or the lipid soluble drugs are going to be converted to water soluble preparations, and mostly they are going to be excreted via urine, and that part is called excretion. And once we are combining these last two parts, the metabolism and excretion, in combination we are calling it elimination. So again I am starting from the very beginning. We are talking about pharmacokinetics. It is the body, what the body does to the drug, which includes absorption. I haven't described absorption yet, followed by distribution, and which I didn't mention in my previous slides, plasma protein binding, then followed by metabolism, and then excretion. During the process of absorption, these drugs may undergo a certain kind of metabolism which we do not require in most of the cases, and that metabolism is known as first pass metabolism. So what is absorption? Absorption is basically the sojourn of a drug, that means the transport of a drug from its site of administration to the circulation. So it's the sojourn of a drug from its site of administration to the circulation. Now, absorption of a drug is depending on two types of factors. The factors which are called drug dependent factors, that means only depending on the drug, and the second factor is the factors related to the absorbing medium. So if we are taking only drug related factors, the factors which are affecting drug absorptions are the size of the drug, the state of the drug, whether it is in the liquid form or in the solid form. Obviously the liquid form is going to be absorbed quicker, its chemical nature, its disintegration time, that means how quickly a drug is going to be disintegrated at a very quick time, and dissolution time, that means how quickly the drug is going to be dissolved in the biological fluid of our body. So all these things are coming under drug related factors. And the factors related to absorbing medium are it's the blood flow through the area. If the blood flow is more, the absorption is going to be quicker. Huge surface area which is present in small intestine. So the surface area, the contact time of the drug with the blood, the pH which I have already described, that acidic drug will be quickly absorbed from alkaline medium, from an acidic medium. That means the non-ionized fraction is more, whereas the ionized fraction of a drug will be absorbed less quicker in comparison to the non-ionized fraction of the drug. And how these absorption, what are the methods of absorptions are available in our clinical practice? The transports are already been described at the beginning of this presentation. So those things are being mentioned over here, the active and passive, and I have vividly described this before starting absorption. Now once the absorption is happened, it is complete, the drug is available in the systemic circulation. Now once the drug is available in the systemic circulation, it is either present in the bound form, that means it binds with the plasma protein. The acidic drug will bind with albumin, whereas the basic drug will bind with usually the alpha 1 glycoprotein. The example of acidic drug is aspirin. The example of basic drug is atropine. There are so many other examples, but for the moment you try to remember one from each. Then it will ultimately distributed in different organs. Then it will undergo metabolism, which in our term, in pharmacological term, also known as biotransformation. That has two types, type 1 and type 2, and ultimately it is undergoing excretion. This biotransformation and excretion, that means the metabolism and excretion in combination, is known as elimination. So this is one curve which is showing that plasma concentration versus time profile of a single dose of a drug, and the drug is given via oral route. And here you see from this level it started undergoing absorption, then little bit of distribution, then from here onwards it is undergoing excretion, and ultimately it is excreted completely from the body. The point, at this point, around in between 14 and 12, it is around 13, it is reaching the maximum height, and that is known as Cmax or concentration maximum. Whereas if you draw a perpendicular line and it cuts around this level, so it is around 3 hours, that is called Tmax. Tmax means the time at which the drug reaches its maximum concentration. So from here we have started understanding two more terms. One is Cmax, that is the concentration maximum, this point, and other one is Tmax, the time at which it reaches the concentration maximum. Now once the drug is available in the systemic circulation, we will try to get, or we will get the beneficial or the harmful effect of the drug. And for whatever may be the nature of the drug, it is the free fraction of the drug which is responsible for its action. It is not the bound form. The bound form is acting as a reservoir. When the free form is going to be depleted or finished, the bound form will give you supply from there. Once the bound form is also depleted, you have to give another dose. So the dosing is going to be adjusted according to the nature of the drug. There are some drugs which can be given once daily dose regimen. There are some drugs which may be given thrice daily dose regimen, because we want that free fraction of the drug to be available at a particular concentration always. Otherwise, that fraction of the drug is never going to be useful in clinical practice, or it is not crossing that minimum effective concentration level. Now, here you will know a newer term. The term is bioavailability. What do we mean by the term bioavailability? It means that the active fraction of the drug that reaches systemic circulation or at its site of action. There are some places where the blood is not available, like eyes, where your cornea is there. So the concentration will be measured at aqueous humor. So either the systemic circulation or any biological fluid which is relevant to that part and at its site of action in unchanged form. If it is changed before that, that means the drug has already undergone fast pass metabolism. So it is the unchanged form which is available in the systemic circulation after a particular route of administration is known as bioavailability of the drug. This is also defined in another manner, or in another way it can be explained. It refers to the rate and extent of absorption of a drug from a dosage form administered by any route as determined by its concentration time curve. This curve, which I am going to show you right now, is time plus versus plasma concentration or serum concentration curve in blood or by its excretion in urine. So it is, this bioavailability is measure of the fraction of administered dose of a drug that reaches the systemic circulation or any biological fluid in unchanged form at the site of action. So that drug is only going to be effective. Now, what are the things which are going to modulate bioavailability of the drug? All the factors which I discussed during absorption will definitely alter the bioavailability of the drug if it is given via oral route, because I have discussed the oral route. So all those factors, specifically here they have mentioned first pass metabolism, which is very high in case of lignocaine, which is a local anesthetic, and propranolol, solubility, instability, and obviously the chance of this first pass metabolism is higher in case of oral route of drug administration, and it is least in case of intravenous route of drug administration. So as undergraduate, for you the bioavailability of a drug which is in the injected form IV is almost 100%. The drug may be incompletely absorbed. The drug may undergo first pass metabolism, as I said. Now from here you also have to know few terms. One significant term is called bioequivalence. So oral formulation of a drug from different manufacturers or different batches from the same manufacturer may have the same amount of the drug, and that is called chemically equivalent, but they may not yield the same blood level. That means they are not biologically equivalent. So two preparations of a drug are considered bioequivalent when the rate and extent of bioavailability of active drug from them is not significantly different under suitable test conditions. Now, before a drug is administered orally in solid dosage form can be absorbed, it must break into individual small particles, for which the time required is called disintegration time, and ultimately is converted to active drug. Tablets and capsules contain a number of other materials like diluents, stabilizing agents, binders, lubricants, and ultimately it is dissolved in the aqueous gastrointestinal content, and that is the time required for this is known as dissolution time. So all these things, as I said before, which will modify absorption of a drug will also modify the bioavailability of a drug. So here we have heard or we have learned a new term that is called bioequivalence. Now, when we are prescribing a drug, you see here it will be difficult for you to understand. Rather, I think this one is going to give you a better idea. So, here you see I have prescribed a drug and it is given via oral route. It is crossing that green line, and that means this till this line it is having a subtherapeutic range. That means the drug is there in your systemic circulation at this level, but that is not going to be clinically effective. So once it crosses this line and it reaches its therapeutic range, then only it will have some clinical action. And that is the reason why we used to say this line, the lowermost line, is called minimum effective concentration level. And the concentration of the drug, which also includes Cmax, that is the topmost point, this part, the area of this part is clinically relevant. Only this part will work for you in clinical practice. Rest of the other part, suppose you have prescribed a drug and the drug is being shown from here, and you see that the multiple doses are given because it is after a certain peak onset it is coming back. So before it is coming back, you have to give a second dose. If you are not giving a second dose, suppose you have prescribed one drug which started from here onward, and showing a curve like this, falling below this green line, is definitely have a bioavailability, very high bioavailability, because the area covered is almost similar to the area covered by this another drug. But the problem is this drug is not going to be clinically relevant because its level never crosses that minimum effective concentration line. Third most point which you have to understand, that every drug has got some kind of adverse drug reactions. So after the peak onset, you have to see whether this concentration of the drug is touching the higher dose, that means highermost dose, the lethal dose or not. If you have mistakenly prescribed very high dose of drug, it may cross this peak level and it may lead to different kinds of adverse drug reactions which are not desirable. There are some adverse drug reactions which will definitely happen with a drug, because a drug is a no drug without any adverse drug reactions. In evidence-based medicine, we will always see that some drugs, I mean all drugs, have some kinds of adverse drug reaction or side effects. Now drugs usually have two names. For you they have two names. One is called a non-proprietary name. It is like your name which is given in our college. So with that name you will be identified anywhere in the world, and that name is called non-proprietary name. And the other name is basically just like your nickname. Someone is calling you Raju, someone is calling you Puchu. So whatever the way they are calling you, that is for drug, that is going to be the same, and that is called the brand name. For example, I am telling you, paracetamol is the non-proprietary name. So wherever you go, UK, USA, Japan, if you write paracetamol 500 milligram tablet, it will be available all over the world. But here different companies have given different name to paracetamol. One company has given a name Calpol, the other company has given a name Crocin. So that is called the brand name. Beside these two, there is another name that is called chemical name. That means on the basis of the organic structure, they have classified these drugs like propan-2-ol. That is the name of propanolol. So it is the organic structure which will help you to give chemical name, which is not required for a clinical pharmacology. So you can eliminate this one. And for you, non-proprietary name is going to be a generic name. And till you are not becoming a medical practitioner, registered medical practitioner, you should start a habit of writing any drug in non-proprietary name with proper dose and dosage form. For you, these brand names are irrelevant at this moment. So thank you so much for your patient hearing, and we are concluding first part of pharmacokinetics today here at this moment.